Clown loaches are a unique fish in the hobby. They have a striking pattern and get to an impressive size. They are fish I've been keeping for over 3 years now, and I want to answer the most common questions I get about them. Hi, it's Connor. Welcome to or back to my channel. So as I said in the intro, I've been keeping clown loaches for a little over 3 years now, and on the videos I've made about them previously, I've gotten a handful of questions, so I kind of want to put together the most common ones and just make a video about that. So I broke it into sections to kind of organize the questions, and the first one I wanted to cover is tank mates and aggression. So the first question here, are they aggressive and can you keep them in a community? So overall, they're not aggressive at all. I would definitely rate them as peaceful. They have so many tank mate options and they do great in most communities. There's a few things to keep in mind. So they really won't bother almost any other species of fish. They're very peaceful towards them. They do get very large, and I'll cover that in a bit, but they get to almost a foot. They grow slow though. But because of that, if there is any small fish, definitely could snack on them. Like something like a neon tetra when clown loach is small would be fine, but if a clown loach gets to full size, it could become a snack for them. So you just want to keep in mind as clown loaches get larger, really small fish that would fit in their mouth might not work. As far as maybe other problems is other loach species could be a problem. Personally, I've kept them with yo-yo loaches completely fine. They all got along great and they're very peaceful, but I know mixing some loach species can cause problems. As far as other problems, clown loaches are very active, so any species that gets stressed by high activity, high movement in the tank, clown loaches might not be best for mixing with them. One I can think of right away is discus. Generally, it's not recommended to mix clown loaches and discus, at least when the clown loaches are large, because they love to dart around the tank and that can really spook and just stress the discus. So any fish like that, the clown loaches might stress, so it might not be the best. Besides that, there really is tons of tank mate options, and especially as clown loaches get larger, they're bottom feeder that can go with some species that kind of has limited bottom feeder options. One, like I have cichlids behind me, American cichlids. So pretty much most American cichlids, as long as they're not too overly aggressive, will work with larger clown loaches. And then I've seen many setups of people having African cichlids and having clown loaches as the bottom feeder. As long as you can kind of find the balance between parameters between them, it'll probably work. So lots and lots of options. General communities work too. Like I said, just don't let the fish be too small for the clown loaches and you should be good. The next one here is, mine are always hiding. Is this normal and what can I do? So mine have always had phases of hiding too, and it is pretty common with clown loaches. In general, I found that part of the day mine are hiding and part of the day mine are very active, usually in the morning, before feeding and after feeding. You can see them right now swimming over here behind me a lot. That's because they just ate. But there is times of the day where I literally won't see them at all. And it's kind of cool because it kind of gives your tank kind of different periods where sometimes there'll be periods of you'll see no fish and there's sun's in there, and other times they'll be completely active. So that's a cool thing about clown loaches. Now, one thing I will say is some people will notice, especially when they get them, that they don't see a clown loach at all. They're just hiding all day. And I'd say that's normal. If you do notice that your clown loach is normally active and then all of a sudden they start hiding for days and days, you don't see them, that could be a sign of stress. So definitely check your water parameters and think about if there's any changes you made, like adding any new fish that have stressed them out or something like that. But generally when you first get them, I find that they do like to hide a lot more. And as they get more comfortable, they'll be out and swimming more. The one thing that will really help with this and getting them out more is to have more clown loaches. Really, 4 is like the absolute minimum, but like really 6 is really what you want, at least 6. And the more you get, the more active they will be. They'll be swimming in a school in groups. So that's definitely something. I'll also note that when I added my yo-yo loaches to my tank, had them together, their activity increased, I thought, from that. So if you have fish that are similar to them that they like swimming with, that'll also help them be more active. Beyond just having more and having at least 6 as the minimum, a few other things is dim lighting. They generally like to be under foliage or hiding. Escape the tank with plants and caves and rocks where you can see through them, and so they might be hiding, they might be in the shade, which they like so they feel comfortable, but you can see through there and still see them. Next, we're going to go on to some questions on appearance. So the first one of this section is, how large do they get? So in the wild, they can get to 18 to 20 inches, so they can get really massive. In stores, usually only see them maybe 1 to 3 inches. Sometimes you see larger ones, but that's even rare. So they can get really massive in the wild. In captivity, though, when you're keeping them in aquariums, 12 inches is the general maximum people see. Some people got them larger, but generally you'll see them get to about 12 inches. Some won't get that large, but 12 is about the average you'll see them in captivity. But in the wild, they can get even larger, so just something to keep in mind. And a similar question is, how fast do they grow? So until they get to 5 inches, from 0 to 5 inches, they grow at about half an inch to 1 inch a year. And then once they get to about the 5 inch point, they definitely slow down, and they'll probably do about a 1/4 inch to a half inch a year. I can say I've seen this myself. My largest one, Rita, she's probably between 5 to 6 inches now. She definitely grew pretty quick. She definitely grew pretty consistent to that point, and then once she's gotten to that 5+ inches, she's definitely slowed down. So that is something to keep in mind, is once they get there, they will slow down significantly, but they will keep growing every year. And the growth does vary between individuals. Even I have 4 smaller ones that are newer that I got at the same time. They were all 1 inch when I got them, and they have vastly different sizes now. Some are maybe 1.25 inches, only 1.5 inches, and there's at least 1 or 2 that are probably 2.5 inches. So they definitely vary in speed. But what I just said for the estimated growth per year is generally what people find. What do I do if my clown loach is fading in color? So clown loaches, when they're stressed, they often will fade in color. They'll kind of get grayed out or washed out is kind of a term people say. Their black stripes will kind of turn gray or faded, and just overall they'll be lacking color. The rest of them will have, instead of that nice orange, it might be paler, more like an off-white color. So there's a few reasons for it. If you ever see them sparring, and they do this to establish dominance hierarchy, they usually fade then. During water changes, it's very common to see them fade, and if you add a new fish or something to the tank, it's also very common to see them fade. Now, sometimes randomly, I'll just see them, one day out of the week, they'll be faded, and it doesn't really mean anything to go back to the color, later that day or the day after. The one thing I'll say is it does indicate a possible problem in your tank. It could indicate stress. It could just be random, but if you do see it and maybe you see it for more than a day, test your water. Think about if there's any changes or anything that could be wrong. It might be nothing, and I would say if it's only for 1 day, I wouldn't worry about it. But if you notice for more than a day, you're like a week that they're all grayed out, yeah, maybe it's trying to indicate something to you. Them losing their color is also a common thing as they age. If you look online, most larger clown loaches, they'll either have kind of gray stripes, or the stripes actually will kind of be broken with some of it kind of missing, faded out. And a lot of them get that kind of gray, washed out color as they get older and large. How do you tell males apart from females? So this is very difficult to do. So a few things that could help. The one is females are normally bulkier, but you really won't know this unless you've had them for a while, or they get kind of the max size. And then the next thing where you can probably know the gender of one of the ones you keep is the female tends to lead the pack. So the largest one you have over time tends to be a female. A female generally outgrow the rest and be the most dominant one. So that's something to keep in mind, is you can probably assume your largest one is a female. What are albino clown loaches? So they're also called platinum clown loaches, and they're actually not albino. They just lack melanin. So they actually have white stripes instead of black stripes. And they're very rare. You'll see some pictures online, or some pictures here that I found online. A few people have found them randomly at stores over the years, but they're very hard to find. And there probably isn't any known way to breed this in them. Otherwise, I'm sure it would be done, because they're very rare, and I'm sure if someone could figure this out, they'd make a lot of money. But they look awesome. I'd love to find one myself, but they generally known as platinum clown loaches. You might see them as albino, but they really aren't albino. They're just lacking melanin and have white stripes because of that. Next, I'm going to go on to some questions on tank setup. So the first here is, what kind of tank setup is recommended for them? You can kind of keep them in different tanks as they grow. They are a fish that grows very slow. I went over the growth rates before, but it's generally going to take anywhere from 2 to 3 years to get to that 5 to 6 inch point. And then after that, it's going to go much slower. To the 5 to 6 inch point, you can definitely keep them in a 55 gallon. That's probably what's recommended to help them grow as fast as they need to, because they do like to swim a lot and they do swim fast. So 55 is probably the minimum in general for them, and you also really want at least 5 or 6. More is better though. Now, once they get over the 5 inch point, 5, 6 inch point, you really want to upgrade the size. You could do this in iterations, like you could go to a 75 and then you could go to a 125, for example. Now, for their lifetime, when they're full size, 10 inches plus, you really want at least 125 gallon. Larger is going to be better, but you really want like a 6-foot tank because they like to swim back and forth and swim fast. And so I'd say 125 gallon or more is going to be better, especially because you also really need to have 5 or 6 of them as well. Can you mix them with plants? So it depends on their size, really. Overall, when they're small, yes, they'll do great. They really shouldn't bother plants too much. Now, the problem is when they get larger, they love to dig and they're much larger, more powerful, so they're known to uproot plants. So that can be a problem when they're larger. I would say stay away from plants that are rooted and have delicate roots. Anything that are, their roots don't really need to be in the ground, like Anubias, Java fern, moss, plants like that. Hornwort, for example, those will do great with clown loaches throughout the lifetime. Just be aware they might get moved around and knocked up, so you might need to glue them or put plant weights or something like that. Some people have found their clown loaches, they'll nibble on plants though and put little holes in them. Kind of a funny behavior. I personally never had that problem with my clown loaches, but some people have noticed that. So if you do have a beautifully aquascape tank, clown loaches might not be the best, but when they're small, they'll probably be all right in most situations. Next, I want to talk about health and diseases. So the first one here is to talk about ick. Ick, if you read on many clown loach guides, you'll see it brought up. There are species known for getting ick, and ick's the little white spots that appear on fish. Now, clown loaches, they don't have scales like normal fish, so they're more vulnerable to ick, so that's the reason they get it more. Now, clown loaches also, because they don't have scales, a lot of medications and a lot of ones for ick, they won't do well with, or at least they're more sensitive with, so you have to either do a lower dose, or some you can't even do at all. So definitely look up if you're going to put any medications in clown loaches, if you can put them in with them, and the proper doses, definitely do your research on that. But if your clown loaches do get ick, and thankfully it's never happened to mine, but it is a common thing to get, is raising the temperature is going to be the best thing you can do. Really, so if you raise the temperature with ick, it'll increase or speed up the life cycle. So if you increase the temperature, it'll speed up the life cycle of ick and just kind of make the clown loaches get through it faster. And that's probably the best natural cure you can have for them. And really, you're going to want to put the temperature up at 86 to 88 degrees Fahrenheit. Not all your fish in your tank might be able to handle that. Clown loaches can handle that. But so you might want to quarantine the clown loaches or take out all the fish, whatever's easiest with the setup you have. That's going to be the best way and the safest way to get your clown loaches over the ick. Now, in general, to prevent ick, just keeping the clown loaches in the warm temperature is going to be the best. If you can keep it at 82 to 84, that's going to be really good and really reduce your chances of ever getting ick for your clown loaches. I personally keep this tank at 80, and that's because of the other fish I keep. That's pretty much the highest temperature I can keep it at for the clown loaches, but still in a safe range for the other fish, so that's kind of the middle ground I do. Besides that, a warm temperature and just keeping your tank clean is going to be the best things for preventing ick on clown loaches. Next is skinny disease. So this is another disease common, especially as clown loaches get older. I've heard from so many people that once their clown loaches get, to 5-6 inches, they start to get skinny. They're eating fine, but they just can't put on any weight and they just get skinnier and skinnier. So this is known as skinny disease. It generally is caused by intestinal parasites, commonly one called spironucleus, and it generally is recommended to use medications to solve this. Otherwise, it usually won't go away naturally on its own. And so definitely do research on this. I've never had it, thankfully. Hopefully never will, but I haven't really looked too far into these medications. But generally what I found is 3 options. One is spirohexol, next is sterazine, and last is Flagyl. I might be pronouncing all those wrong, but definitely do your research on those. But those are just kind of the most common ones I've found that people have used for solving this. So hopefully you don't get it, but something to keep in mind that is a possibility. So if you do see them just getting skinnier and skinnier, I would act on it sooner than later before it is too late. And then to close out here, I just have a few miscellaneous questions. The first one is, can you breed clown loaches? So overall, to breed them in captivity, it's extremely hard. Just doing it in a tank you have, very unlikely. Very few people have done it, but there have been some that have done it, although they have very advanced breeding setups. It's actually a farm, is the one I know, Bio Aquatics. And so they breed them. They have a pretty advanced setup. I'm pretty sure they use hormones and play with the temperatures to mimic their natural breeding seasons. But Aquarium Co-op actually has a really good video on the breeder, so I'll kind of show this here and link to it. Definitely recommend that if you want to learn more about it. But The overall answer is it's possible, but hard to do, and you need a very special setup to do it most likely. Next is, what do I feed my clown loaches? So overall, they love to eat, and they'll eat probably almost anything you put in the tank. I actually noticed mine, because I keep them with cichlids, they love to eat cichlid pellets, so they probably eat cichlid pellets as much as they do the bottom feeder food I put in with them. But specifically, what I put in there for them to eat on is 1, Vibra Bites, 2, mixed bottom feeder wafers and pellets. I kind of sometimes use Hikari, sometimes I get other brands. It kind of depends what's available at the time. Next is algae wafers that have spirulina in them. And then I try to feed them frozen food 1 to 3 times a week. Usually brine shrimp these days. Have done bloodworms in the past, but there's some iffiness about bloodworms, so I tend to go with brine shrimp these days. Is there a difference between local fish stores and chain stores, and where's the best place to get them? So I've gotten most of mine from PetSmart. When I first got into the hobby, that's where I got a decent amount of my fish. I know not everybody doesn't like them, and there's valid reasons for that. But like the largest one I have that's still beautiful is from PetSmart, and I've seen others gotten ones from PetSmart that have grown up to be beautiful. If you're going to get them from a chain store though, really pay attention if they look healthy in there. Only get them if they're swimming around, have nice colors, look active, no signs of disease from any other fish in the tank. And even the overall store, it looks good, because there's some PetSmarts that keep pretty nice tanks, others not so much. And it goes the same for Petco and the other chain stores. Now, it's always great, and I very much enjoy supporting local stores, local fish stores. So if you can find them there and they look healthy, I'd say good, great. One problem is they're not always super common. Sometimes it can be very hard to find them, and depending how many stores you have around you, it can be very hard to find clown loaches. So if you do want them and you can only find them at chain stores and they look healthy there, I say go for it. I don't see any reason not to if you can't find them at a local store. You can also order them online. That's also a possibility. Only bad thing about that is you can't really see their health. And clown loaches, they can be kind of finicky. You really want to get them in good health, in my opinion. And then the last question I have here is, are they good beginner fish? And overall, I'm going to say no. No, they don't have any crazy difficult care requirements, but they do have some stuff that beginners might not know, and they're not really the most hardy fish. They're more susceptible to diseases and bad water and mistakes. So I'd really rank them as intermediate. I think if you can keep in tanks for, even a couple of months, kept a few different species, and you want to try them, I think you totally can. But I think if you're someone getting a brand new tank or setting up a new tank for someone else clown loaches probably aren't the best first fish to get, because 1, they get to a very large size, so you got to manage that, and they also live a really long time, so they're really not a species for someone just trying the hobby to see if they like it. As I said, they're more susceptible to disease, and they're very less forgiving to bad water or mistakes you can make. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now, besides that, there's nothing too special about the care, besides knowing that they need a large tank and just keeping very clean water. So, once you have some experience and you're intermediate, definitely a great fish to try. And definitely a fish that, you need to do some research on, more than some of your basic common community fish. So kind of a good step up in the hobby to go to some more advanced stuff. So that's kind of my opinion on, are they good beginner fish. Well, that wraps up all the questions I wanted to go through in this FAQ. If you do have any more questions I didn't answer, definitely list them in the comments below. I'll try my best to answer everyone in there, and if you get enough, definitely do one of these again in the future. But if you found this video helpful, please give it a like and consider subscribing to my channel. And anyway, I want to thank everyone for watching, and I'll catch everyone in the next video.